I think one of the hardest things for me was telling my kids. I didn't have any other symptoms. I just noticed that I had a lump in my neck. So I went to my primary doctor, and she didn't know what it was. They did say, well, it's not something you die from. And I thought, okay, that's good. I don't even think about it anymore. I mean, it used to be before treatment, it was kind of like having a time bomb. You're waiting for it to go off. My name is Margie Hall. I live in Southern California. I was diagnosed in 2019. I had a lymph node in my neck that was enlarged. And when I went to the doctor, they decided that that's what it was. Chronic lymphocytic leukemia, which they told me if you had to have cancer, it was the best kind to have. So they gave it a little positive spin. I didn't have any other symptoms. I just noticed that I had a lump in my neck. So I went to my primary doctor, and she didn't know what it was. So they sent me to have a CAT scan. And through the CAT scan, it was diagnosed. And they did a biopsy on it last, and that's how it was diagnosed. But I had no other symptoms at all. So it was quite a shock. I'm relatively healthy. So to have someone say, "Oh, you have cancer," I thought, I can't be, but it was. It's very scary, and I think one of the hardest things for me was telling my kids that it's hard to tell your kids that you have cancer, and but then they were very supportive, after that. But no, from the time I noticed the lump in September, I was diagnosed in November, so it was very quick. Kaiser was willing to send my information. And I ended up with the head of the Department of CLL at Dana-Farber Institute in Boston. So I thought, that's a God thing. How would you choose this? And he even was involved in research in the medication that I took. And before he looked at my information, he said, what's your plan, your goal? He said, do you want to have more life in your life, or do you want to have a longer life? Meaning if you go on the medication that, for life, and you may. So that's kind of what I looked at. And then we just talked about the side effects but it was actually the specialist that came down with. He said, I've looked at everything. I think you should. I needed one more test. I needed the IGH, what do you call it? IGHI or something. He says, you need one more test, and if you come back out unmutated, then this is exactly what you should take. If you come out mutated, this is what you should take. So I took this report to my oncologist, and that's the way we went. I was on what they call wait and watch, and some people call it wait and worry, because the side effects of the medication can be really bad. So they don't want to start treatment until your symptoms are much more severe. So I wasn't treated until 2021. I came up with an idea during Wait and Watch. If you call Wait and Watch, think of it as boot camp. When you go to boot camp, they get you physically strong. So if you're already physically strong, you do exercises to keep that way. If you're not, then you start. The next step is they teach you what you need to do if you have to go into battle, which is what you need to learn about CLL. And then the next thing they do is you build a community around you. Okay, I would like to have that person with me in battle because I could see how they. So I kind of looked at it that way. I thought I didn't recognize it at the time, but that's the steps I took. And so if a person would use Wait and Watch as a boot camp rather than as a worrying time, I think it would make a difference. I don't know. That was my concept. so it was a year and a half. I developed more lymph nodes. You were supposed to watch out for fatigue and night sweats. I did not ever have night sweats. I did not have fatigue until kind of early spring of 21. I kind of measured how I was doing by my hiking, if I could still hike as far as I could or as fast as I could, if I could get up the hill. I did notice a difference in the late spring of that year. I had a lot of lymph nodes developed, and I had a lot of them on my stomach, and they were concerned about the lymph nodes crowding the main organs. So that's the reason I started. Other than that, they wouldn't have started it. But basically, the fatigue is the only thing that I really felt that made a difference. So eventually, a couple of my really close hiking friends, I told them, and one hiking friend goes to church with me. So before and I put a prayer request in at church, so my church family knew. And I think it's almost the concept that I look at myself and I think I'm a really strong person. And then when something happens to you, you think that almost diminishes your strength. And people will look at you differently because, you aren't as strong as you thought you were. So I think there's a little pride issue in there. But then there's two types of treatments. There's several types of treatments. Some I didn't qualify for because I have blood pressure medicine and I'm on blood thinners. But the main difference that we came up with was there's time limited, and then there's you're on medication for life or until it quits working, and then they put you on a different one. But we had a family meeting after my grandson's wedding, and we kind of decided that medication for life that's not the way I live. So we decided that I should do the targeted medication, time limited medication. It was a textbook case. It was absolutely fantastic. I had absolutely no side effects. You have 6 infusions at the beginning. They are not chemo. And then 1 month after you start your infusions, you start your medication, oral medication. Because there's serious side effects to that oral medication, tumor lysis syndrome is very dangerous. It can affect your kidneys. That part could actually kill you, I guess. But so they put you in the hospital for that. I was in the hospital for 3 days. So I was in the hospital, nothing happened. So then I went home and kept doing the 50. Then a week later, I went back and they moved it to 100. I still did not have any side effects. And then from there on, the next week you go to 200, but you stay at home as long as you had no reaction. And then they move it up to 400. But it couldn't have gone more perfect. So I'm very, very blessed. Right now, I have blood tests every 3 months, and I see the oncologist every 6 months. And I have no other symptoms, and I just need to watch for symptoms. And everything's good. It's been... I couldn't ask for anything better. I don't even think about it anymore. I mean, it used to be before treatment, it was kind of like having a time bomb. You're waiting for it to go off. But since I've had treatment, I rarely even think about it. It was like, if I have my blood tests or my oncologist appointment. But I'm just a very positive person. And I think it was interesting. I heard something. I have a Christian radio station on in my car, and I was going to hiking yesterday. And it said, change the things you can and adjust your attitude to the things you can't. And I thought that's really good. Why do we worry about all the things we can't change? If it comes back, it's going to come back. And I'll be treated again. And it's likely to come back. I am not cured. I'm in remission, or what they call it, UMRD, undetected minimal residual something syndrome or whatever. Anyway, but I just don't think about it. It isn't a death sentence. And then be your own advocate, go out and find the information. And again, I know there are others, but the Health Unlocked was so fantastic for me. And then I think just build a good support system. So I just want people to be encouraged and not discouraged. And I know there's so many diseases out there are so much worse than what I have and what I went through. So I think we have to count our blessings when we can.